Okay, going live. Whew, finally.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Sneha Ru. I'm palliative physician and the founder of Ori Kalankini. Ori Kalankini is an organization that's changing narratives around menstruation and sexuality in India using art, theater, and dialogue. This series is called Leaning into the Network series, where people from different parts of our network get to meet each other, talk about their journey, talk about the work that they do, and specific relief efforts they're making towards the COVID 19 situation. Today, we have a group called the Adamant Eves. They are India's first and only all women improv group. So, hi, everyone. Who do we have here? Can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Balashri, popularly called as Bala.
Hi, I'm Lakshmi. I'm popularly called Lakshmi.
Hi, I'm Aarti, popularly called as Aarti.
Hi, I'm Shweta. I'm popularly called a lot of things.
Oh.
We ask everyone the same first question, whoever comes to leaning into this network series. When were you first made aware of your gender? Like, was it a specific incident or was general atmosphere like that you just knew? So, do you have any story around that?
That's a good question. Yeah.
It is a loaded question, right?
Yeah.
I think back to when it happened, and then I immediately think of an incident that was earlier than that. So
yeah,
it was super young. I think I was 3 years old, 3 or 4. And I remember this one incident. Something could have happened before that, but this one incident was I was 3 and I was a child in my grandmother's house for summer vacations, and I was just running around all over the place, covered in mud, just wearing a pair of shorts and nothing else because I'm a child. And as soon as I ran into the house, someone was like, "What are you doing? Why are you running around? Put on some clothes. Why are girls are not supposed to be running around like this?" And I was like, I look exactly the same as my cousin who is a boy. Why am only I being told to put on clothes? Yeah, so that was the first time where, you're a girl, put on clothes came up for me.
Thank you, Bala.
So my story is also related to clothes. And interestingly, the earliest I can remember being aware of my gender was after my younger brother was born. So, in addition to my younger brother being a boy, um, I remember in my native place, and I used to love wearing frocks, that go up till the knee or little below the knee. And when I used to sit in this very distinctive way wherein, I would knock my knees together and legs would go like this. So when I'm wearing a frock and if I'm sitting like this, chances are that I will not be sitting demurely or something might be visible. My thighs might be visible. And I remember one of my relatives, one of my aunts telling me to put my legs together when I'm sitting wearing a frock, or we will put you in salwar kameez or something so that you're not visible. And I think that was when I was reminded sort of negatively that girls don't sit a certain way, or girls are supposed to only sit and behave in a certain way and are not supposed to show their body.
For me, because I have an older sister, and I stayed with my parents, I was not really made aware of my gender as much as when I started going to school, and I went to a co-ed school, but it was primarily a boys' school, and they were like very less number of girls. So the already rift between boys and girls when you're like 3 or 4 had already began, and that's when I think that's my earliest memories. There could be something beyond that, but that's one of my earliest memories of being not being shunned in a way by other younger children, by other younger boys, because I was a girl. And so I had to go with my camaraderie, with my own group of girls.
Fine, sir.
I think I have like a couple of snippets about the same. The first was I think I was aware of in the way that they addressed to me, and this is interesting. Bala and I were talking on one of our WhatsApp groups, and one of the so we use DA a lot, DA, for like it's go, things come and go like that, Ra, Da. So right now
Yeah.
very
Macha.
Macha and Da phase. So we like in our group we refer to each other like that. So one of our team members was like D, and it was this message, and I was just like no, and I don't know why. And then I suddenly realized when I was born, since I was like very young, like young enough to like be crawling on my knees, etc. There was a very like there's a way of calling ADA. There's like ADA, like ADA, and I'm they used to speak to me in Tamil and Malayalam mostly. And it was very it's almost like it has no content about why they're calling, but the content that it has in tonally is like they're already disgusted, or they're calling something disgusting, which is really ridiculous. And it's like ADA, and I to this day, and I realized this when excuse me, sorry, I'm just gonna put my charger in. When this person who has no context to this just messaged D randomly, and I felt my body just like cringe and close, and I'm like, where is this coming from? I was like, oh, all the way back. But two other very important times when I remember is once when I just started menstruating, and I had to go to visit my grandmother, and I had to lie to her that I was menstruating, because it got really like weird. Like there was this whole like one kind of thing, and she couldn't have done it if I was menstruating, which I was the second time over when I was visiting her, but I lied to her that I was not, which then became this really strange cat and mouse game where I had to throw the pad away really secretively, and it was just ridiculous. And I guess there was a lot of shame, but I made like a game out of it then. But one of the most formative experiences I remember, I went to a very, very coercive school called Kendra Vidyalaya Hebal. And it was extremely, extremely toxic, especially when it came to boy-girl divide. At ninth grade, many of us were being attractive to people as our development stage would have us do. And there was this particular two people who I guess were like seeing each other, and they were found behind the rocks. And it got really bad because the girl got slut shamed to a degree where it became a whole drama. Her father came and slapped the guy, and they left, both of them were rusticated, and the girl was in 10th grade. So it was also like academically very impactful. And now I hear, and I didn't know them personally, I hear that, and the guy also got equally like yelled at, but the girl got slut shamed a lot. And they are now married. So me and a bunch of our friends keep wondering, it could have, I mean, it turned out the way it did, but if it was not coercive and so divisive, maybe they wouldn't have ended up together. And all the best to them, and kudos to them for, I mean, their failure there is, but what strange systems were in place. And I was completely part of that system of saying, Arey, yikes, why did she do it? At least like do it outside school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This happened in medical school for me. Like I was in this horrible, I don't know, I thought it was a culture shock for me. So I was in this medical school. So where the boy-girl divide was so high that like basically two of them who were classmates were not seeing each other, just shared an ice cream cone. And they were walking, our campus was huge. And you don't expect it in medical school, right? You're already 19 when you join, and you've finished all the thrill of whatever, if you have to do anything by 19. And if you're in medical school, you prepared for gruesome syllabus and all that. So they were just sharing an ice cream cone and not like eating and passing. So our dean came, and she's known to be this whole tiger woman. She came and she called the girl on stage, and she called the guy on stage, and humiliated and slut shamed. I mean, after that, like literally I would dread going to, and I was from Jain College, Bangalore, where I thought I was not progressive. I thought I was not even hip. But then when I came here, I became like, somebody who was too ahead. Yeah, this happened. And that lady pulled her hair. That lady pulled her
Yeah,
hair. Said, do you think it's red light area? I was like, what? You share an ice cream
yeah.
and a medical college.
I went to Christ University, so less said the better.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Now that yeah, especially educational systems can be so oppressive and very formative, informing these.
Yeah, yeah.
So coming back to us talking about Adam and Eve's, so do you want to talk about what is improv first, and then we go to Adam and Eve? So what is improv first, maybe? Because to get a context, when people should know what improv is.
We will display one of the basic tenets of improv, which is yes anding. So probably we'll do the definition together. I will start. Improv is made up on the spot, and every evening's show is unique to the audience which is present there, except the exceptions to this is recorded shows which are happening now online. And
yes, and we don't practice or rehearse any script or line per se. Everything that we create, characters, situations, dialogues, all of it is created on the spot using the audience's suggestions.
Yes, and we follow something called the yes and philosophy, which is we take suggestions or whatever offers that have come from our fellow improvisers or the audience, and we go, yes, and how do we build on this?
Yes, and a lot of popular improv right now is comedic improv, especially in India. However, we sort of espouse the philosophy that improv is not just comedy, and a lot of our improv shows and scenes sample from everyday life and all emotions across the board.
Thank you. Adam and Eve's now. Your name is super interesting, and can you talk about why? I mean, I think I wish Eve were more adamant, but then she would be called Lilith if she were more adamant. But how did you come up with the name Adam and Eve's, and what does it mean to you personally as individuals?
So in 2017, we are part of a bigger company called Improv Comedy Bangalore. And we found that we had equal number of men and women on the team, which is a little rare because women improvisers are not easy to come by. There are very few in India even right now. So we thought, okay, we have equal number of men and women. Why don't we just experiment and see if we took men out of the picture, how would the audience react to seeing women only on stage? I've said this in a lot of other places as well, which is being a woman improviser is a very loaded role to play because it comes with a lot of preconceived notions from the audience. So when we ask for suggestions, doctor, nurse, the audience will always, endow the man as the doctor and the woman as the nurse. Nothing wrong with it, but why? Why all the time? Boss and secretary. Boss is the man.
Implicit biases.
Correct. And there are only so many times where we can just reverse the roles and, like sort of shock the audience, like, oh, it's a man playing a nurse and the woman playing a doctor. Like, okay, so the audience was like, wow, that was super, unexpected. I am thrilled by this. But again, that was not in the right spirit of doing it. So we're like, okay, we have this impediment. Let's just remove men from the picture and see what happens. And it was an experiment. We just brainstormed about a bunch of names, and Adam and Eve's just came up because of the pun, and we like puns. And it has now snowballed into this full-fledged movement from the experiment it was supposed to be. So that's the origins of us and our name.
Right. And what does it mean to each of you personally? Like, do you sometimes, because I named it Ori Kalankini, and yeah, it's like, okay, I'm metaphorically reclaiming that, yes, I stain every month. And I'm also not apologetic about staining your reputation and things like that. And over time, things started growing on me, even when I was not doing menstruation related work. But, I think it helped me build myself as a person. So I'm just curious to know if the Adamant Eve grew on you in any way. Like, have you changed after being in this group?
I think the way that I perceived a lot of things have changed because I was never in a group that was all women. Like I was always from schooling to even like project, college, home, everything was very co-ed and with both genders. So I didn't realize the power of and you can call it power. You can there are a lot of definitions to it, but the power, just the sheer power of being in a group where you yeah, you know the improvisers well. I mean, you know them, they're your friends first and then they're improvisers, and there's this sense of being heard and being listened to that I don't often get in other groups. And so for me, Adamant Thieves is just being powerful in your space.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with the power. It has, I don't want to exaggerate, but it has sort of revolutionized the way that I look at female friendships, the way that I look at improv, because it has helped me clarify what I want out of improv, what kind of scenes I want to do, and what I will and will not sort of, my boundaries when it comes to playing with others and
Yeah.
artists. And that has sort of reflected in my life, because how can it not reflect in your life? And as a woman, as a feminist, my relationship with feminism has grown and evolved thanks to these ladies and my sort of collaborations with them. So in a lot of ways, life has changed for the better.
I think also about something that I really enjoy about improv is it's a great mirror to also learn about one's own biases and one's own choices, and because there is no script, and that process is different. But definitely in an improvised process, at least how I've experienced it, it's suddenly you say something or you do something on stage, because and then you're suddenly like, oh, is this what I think about such a thing? Or at least at that moment, that's how I chose to experience or externalize something. And when I get to experience these things with Bala, Arti, Shweta, and also Kavya and Madhu, who are not there today but also are part of Adamant Eves, then there is a collective conversation that's possible of, okay, I experienced it this way, and what does it mean to you guys? For example, I remember this one time when Bala had heard about this suggestion, and she thought this was really interesting, would be to perform for an all women audience. And I remember that one of the first reactions, and this was from within the larger group or just us, I don't remember, but like, oh, why wouldn't that be exclusionary? Wouldn't that, and that conversation sort of ended there. And this was early on in, I think, 2018 only. But now I know for a fact, because of the experience we have had and the conversations and the negotiations we have had, now the conversation would be like, okay, it is, in one lens it's exclusionary, in another lens it's hyper focusing on an experience which hasn't been spoken about much, or maybe it's a mix of both. Maybe it is important, and we are having those conversations in social justice a lot now, what it means to define inclusivity, tolerance differently, diversity differently, and so yeah, I think the conversation we've had in the world we have lived in last 2 years has changed a lot, and it has been wonderful and useful, and absolutely leaning in on my network in that sense with the Adamant teams.
Yeah, just to tag on to what everybody said, fully resonate with everybody. A experience for me was I grew up as a tomboy, and it was a characteristic that was given a premium. Like you were one of the guys. You're tough. You're confident. You stand up for yourself. And my relationship with femininity was very warped as a result. where I would pride myself in being one of the guys. And there was a lot of internalized misogyny, and didn't have like a group of female friends that I could say, you know what, these are my ride or dies, like I can depend on them no matter what. I was always trying to distance myself from all of these hallmark feminine things. And finding the Adamant Eves has, within like a very short amount of time, I've been able to deprogram a lot of these ideas that I've had, and it has happened like that. Like it is the power of a network of women is so understated in popular culture. I am actually angry, because a lot of women have been deprived of this. It just makes me so angry to find women who are much older than me talking the same way that I had in my teens and in my early 20s, and I'm like, you are missing out. So yeah, I feel very strongly about this. Adventives has just changed a lot of perceptions for me.
Wow. So I got like a lot of questions from what you answered itself, but I'll stick to the next relevant, what I think is next relevant one is, so there are, whenever we have the conversation about being an improv group versus all women improv group, and one artist told me that why should I form an all woman band? I should rather, I would form a band which has the best musicians, and it's, yeah, she makes sense. How do you take a stand on making and keeping Adamant Eves as all women improv group in this whole, what she's, or many people are contending that, even many corporate executives, they're like, I'm a CEO, I'm not a woman CEO. And we see the point in it because the press everywhere is like, oh, she's a woman CEO and see how awesome she is. But to negate that, they're saying that first, pay attention to me and my performance, or me and the merit of rather than the gender. But how do you locate yourself in this conversation as an all women improv band, and when you're seeing so many advantages and transformations happening to your to the group itself?
Yeah. So this actually interestingly reminds me of the whole dialogue around I don't see gender. So on one hand, it is kind of, oh, she's a woman improviser, so that's a lady doctor kind of a thing. But on the other hand, it is also the problematic issue with I don't see gender is that then you don't also see how gendered this art form already is. So if you think of an improv group, and having seen so many improv groups, the first thing that comes to my mind when I think of an improv group is either it is all male, or there's like one lady in the improv group who is usually endowed with the so-called feminine, like a nurse or a secretary or something like that, which it's not a generalization, but the association is so strong in my mind that that's what comes to mind. So I think forming an all women's improv group intended to be that, but it is coming out to be like a revolutionary thing of against this heavily associated male thing, where it's heavily male. We are forming this path, and hopefully in the future it will come to a point where it is more balanced. That is the way that I look at the Adamant Eves, although it's not that we didn't form with the conscious intention of, okay, then everybody, like there's all boys over there, so let's form. We didn't do that, but I think it is turning out to be something of a revolutionary creation of space in a heavily gendered art form that is already there.
So adding another point is, it's also important to know that we are improvisers who deliver and strive to deliver good quality improv, and we happen to be women. So that's a very important part to keep into account. It's should not be looked at the other way. And we still strive and we still go behind extremely good quality improv. And the reason why we've been able to succeed in doing that is succeed as a group is because our aim is to break stereotypes that revolve around the gender that we are in. Our aim is to deliver good quality. versus just harping on the fact that we are women. We don't do that. That's not our agenda.
And first contention is that, right? Like, yeah, they're all women, but are they good? So we have to work extra hard to make sure that.
And also, there is a circular relationship. I feel like we are good improvisers. We're also women. And because we're women who play together, we can actually be better improvisers. Because there is a lot more space. There is a lot more opportunity for you to claim more space when there is a group of women and when there are no men. I mean, fact of the matter is a lot of men who improvise are loud and do make bold choices. We have three sort of categorizations of improv players in improv: the pirate, the robot, and the ninja. The pirate is the one who makes like these big offers, big choices, claims a lot of space. And these are usually men. Ninjas are usually the ones who silently come deliver this very like lethal blow and then disappear, and that's usually women. And the robots can be a mix of both, who plan the scene and who know what comes after what, and who are doing this very logically. So that's also something that I've seen with respect to gender in improv, the balance.
Lakshmi, you did mention about groups which are for everyone except cis het men, and how what
So,
they are
there
saying
was
regarding forming or making a stand. Yeah.
So I think that would also be, that's a big shout out to Laura, who's an improviser, who's creating this something called open space format. It's a democratic knowledge sharing discussion format that she's
Right.
using for non-binary and women identifying improvisers, and it happens once a week, and people take sessions, and there is an interview of like somebody who is working in improv and social justice space or other spaces, importantly, and sharing experience. And one of the I don't know, critiques or criticisms, depending on the intention of the person pointing it out, is, hey, but why aren't men allowed? But that the idea is not that men are not allowed, as much as this is a space carved out. Maybe we should also ask, why is there a need for this conversation to happen without men? What probably is leading to it? Because I don't think people necessarily want to always not. What is it about this space which is making it feel extra safe and making vulnerabilities possible, which is not happening? And for at least some of them, I'm speaking for myself, and from some of the conversations that have happened in those spaces, which is that it is not easy to create that sort of safety to have a conversation, and maybe that, to me at least, and I feel a little strongly about it, I feel like maybe that should be the question rather than why are men not allowed, which to me is quite diluting. Men are allowed everywhere, and this is an OG white male art form, and that is statistically for everybody to see, with the number and the demographic of people who are playing, at least globally, what is visible or hyper visible. So and it's very interesting because there are a lot of folks who are non-binary and who are trans men, or who then take sessions and talk about are very giving, extremely giving, which also would in another conversation convert as labor that they're doing to make themselves visible in this art form, and helping us who are less marginalized in that sense, to see how we can be more diverse and be a more considerate and empathetic and more nurturing space. So which is really wonderful, according to me. Yeah.
And like very important points you brought out. Also, it makes it more clear that what we call as so-called neutral spaces, or we say that, oh, it's for everyone, but the space and the conversation is dominated by cis het men. Even when you talk about offices, you talk about the so-called public space, it is not designed for everybody. So it becomes, in my view, it also becomes this has a space, this has a place. Say all women's group, all women's brand, women's circle, and creating spaces that are safe, where yeah, where people feel safe vis-a-vis the regular public.
And the misconception is that people are, and I don't know, it's funny and it's extremely exaggerated in my head, so maybe I am wrong too, but the idea that people are sitting and like bitching about like men is not true. Like nobody cares.
Like we have so many fun things to talk about, which we miss out in outer. Yeah.
Really, the effort is towards seeing what are the challenges we have faced, what are the ways to change that, what are the conversations we want to be having right now. So the idea, the general idea, and I get it, you're not allowed in a space, so you're worrying and wondering about what's going on, and then your brain is playing these images and I guess nightmares. But maybe this is a time to also say, no, that is not what is happening, because maybe you're not that important. There are more important things.
That just points towards the hubris of these people, right? Like, you really think that we are creating a space exclusively for us to hate on you? Like, how much self-confidence do you, how important do you
and entitlement?
I want some of that confidence. Give me some of that. Like, if I had half that confidence, I'd be doing God knows what by now, It really surprises me.
Yeah, it's amusing.
Let's go to another point which Bala brought out in the last when she answered the last question, that how is it being on stage as women performers? How do the audience see? What are the situations they give? So yeah, and I just want to add like one thing, that Dr. Thirst thing is real. I was an intern, and I had another intern with me who was a male. One person came and he called me nurse, he called me sister, and he looked at him and spoke as if it was a doctor, and I felt so upset. I just walked out of the room.
And I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, and it's more than this thing. Like, for example, there are a group. Another example, we were at a patient's bed. The professor is there. All of us are there. All of us interns. And then he says, pull the curtain or draw the curtain for privacy. I make it a point to not move. So, generally it is the female intern who will draw the curtain. Somehow the men intern think that drawing the curtain is, I don't know, like, it's a small but stupid thing. You can say that, oh, don't make it about gender. But why doesn't it come to them that, oh, I'll go do it, And then finally that particular day, that professor itself went and drew the curtain, which was, like, I think, a good example. I think this is very.
Sneha, can I just pick something out that you said, where people are like, don't make it about gender. He probably didn't say it thinking about gender, and that's the problem. It's so entrenched in his person that he doesn't see it anymore when he says gendered things or asks does gendered asks. And that is exactly what we need to dismantle, the unconscious gendering and gender biases that we have. That argument completely blows my mind. Like, don't make it about gender. It is about gender, and we are not stupid. We've been subjected to this for years. We are perceptive by now. We know where things come from. Please give us the benefit of the doubt. So complete resonate with what you said, and absolutely excellent stance. And hats off to you on that. That's our small rebellion, which we can do.
Which is also interesting is when we are on stage, we do take in characters, roles that are of various genders. So we do come across, we do play men, we do play, male and female. So, and it's very interesting to see, there are some of our own personal biases that come when we play a man. So initially, at least for me, I would come in bigger and gruffer and stronger, because that was the conditioning I was brought up with of a typical heterosexual man, being gruff and strong, whereas a woman character would be like timid. But over the years, and I can speak for, I think, most of us, is that we are trying to break that typical stereotype that's out there. And now we play characters where the audience does not know what gender that person is. Still, we like spit it out till we say, okay, him or her or whatever. So
Yeah.
that's one conditioning we're trying to break within ourselves and the audience that watch us.
Yeah. And adding to that, there are so many scenes that I remember wherein till the end we haven't really referred to the gender at all, and it doesn't matter. And personally for me, I had a lot of implicit biases about about my what I would play and how I would play genders. And it has taken me, and it's still taking me, a lot of introspection. And I think rehearsing with the Adamant and playing with the Adamant have helped a lot in this regard. Although it's not the only factor, because I tend to, for me, it was a question of, how am I playing powerful character endowments? Am I playing it masculine? And the lesser powerful in the scene, am I playing it feminine? And I struggled with it for quite a while. And it is still a process, but I've come to a point where I look at my own scenes and I'm like, okay, there is improvement, in the sense that it's not that I'm consciously playing something masculine and feminine. It's just organically, the gender organically develops in the scene. And it doesn't matter what it is, or how it fluidly changes during the scene itself.
These are very important, like especially the idea about power and masculinity. All the time we equate it, and that many times translates that when it translates as fear of putting women in powerful positions, like somehow they're not one, they're not eligible, but two, they'll be extra bossy, or I don't know. Generally I've heard many times like women can't take power dialogue. And also another, it translates as women who are put in powerful positions, somehow are compelled to act the same patriarchal, hierarchical, masculine way, because power is equated to masculinity for so many centuries and ages. So yeah, these questions are amazing that you asked yourself, and thank you for sharing.
And also in improv, when we're on stage, there are two statuses of a character. Generally, there's a high status and a low status character. And the beauty of the scene comes when a high status and a low status character interact with each other. It's very important to also observe how we, as Adam and Eves, or how other improvisers place those characters. Are we placing only male or men characters as high status characters and female characters as low status characters? Of course not in the Adam and Eves, because we've never done that. We're all the same. But in other improvs, even Adam and Eves as other parts of other improv circles, how do we see other genders and their statuses?
Now, should we talk about conflict resolution? Because that another popular misconception is that women can't be friends, and very popular comics themselves have, in stand-up comedy, have spoken about how movements started by women won't last because they'll just fight and end the movement itself. And like people tagged me into stand-up comedy like that, but that's what the general feeling is, that it won't last, women can't be friends. While we are not saying that we are going to be sisters and we don't have any conflicts at all. I'm sure you have, because we're thinking beings and feeling beings, so we have conflicts. How do you manage your conflicts? And if you find this question offensive, like
not at all. So glad we're having. I'd just like to preamble this and then like throw it to the Adam and Eves. Is that I interestingly, a little contrary to most the sharings, I've always had, like, I've not been best of friends with men or boys. I've not been able to somehow connect, and also I found I have grown up with like large group of women as friends, like 8, 9, 10, and to this day the longest friendships that I've had are all women, like all hands down women. In fact, it took me till post graduation and after, which I'm talking like last 5 years, to have any, or with one exception, to have male friendships with men. And I mean, I don't feel too bad about it because I think I made good choices. In fact, I have lost some of the female friendships very recently since the CAA protests began, and conversations about social justice has been happening, because I realized that a lot of us are in different page about that, rather than, I don't know, whatever power equation or gossip or the usual narrative is the dominant narrative about what breaks female friendships. Those, at least for me, maybe also I worked extra hard, the whole conversation about, okay, you think women cannot be friends, I'm going to show you it's going to be. You think women are always jealous, I'm never going to feel jealousy. These narratives, and then you hyper perform the anti to especially feel validated as a feminist, which now I'm unpacking, or especially in therapy, and also out in our group. So definitely there are conflicts. However, for me, the conflicts, how they're different is how they are talked about, and we will talk, I mean, others will talk more about it, but also where they're rising from. I think that really the crux of that, and how easily we're able to point that out, and how much less it's about the so-called oh, we are just jealous of each other, we can't get along because we are women in a room. So these are very misdirecting and really untrue on a very factual and truthful basis. So now I'll pass that on.
Yeah, so I totally agree. Sorry, Shweta. I just want to say one quick thing about how it's so insulting to our intelligence. It's insulting to women's intelligence that the only thing that we will find to have conflicts about is jealousy or gossip. Like we are evolved beings, contrary to whatever belief these people who are spouting this nonsense hold. We have very we have very complex thoughts and ideas, and our conflicts rise from things like, I don't know, here's a revolutionary thought, not being heard, not being understood, not being listened to, not being given space. These are all things that are very much in the realm of us being us feeling the need to resolve conflict or have conflict. Yes, that's what I wanted to say. Shweta, please go ahead.
Okay, this is great because Bala's point gives me sort of a springing off to what I wanted to say, is that when we talk about improv or any other art form, especially improv, because it is spontaneous, you bring a lot of yourself and your life into the scenes, which means we cannot not talk about the jealousy and insecurity aspect individually. Over time, I think each and every one of the Adamantieves has gone through this journey where, for example, from my end, there have been days when I felt like I was not as good as the other Eves. I felt jealous of all the other Eves. Then I felt like, oh man, I do not deserve a place here. I should probably just, stop being a part of the Adamantieves because they're so good and I'm so bad. And I felt there was this loneliness because I didn't talk about it. But when we finally talked about it, we discovered, oh, everybody also has days when they feel this way. And I think what has kept us afloat here is the fact that we feel safe to communicate with each other, and also feel buoyed by, others give us courage. So when, let's say, Bala speaks up about something that she's going through, I also feel supported enough to talk about what I'm feeling, and that sort of spreads. That doesn't mean we don't have days when we disagree, and that leads to some other low-key drama, which happens. I think it's a human thing. So another point that from Lakshmi that I wanted to sort of make and intertwine is that I used to be the sort of person till my early 20s, I used to strongly believe that I get along better with men than with women. I always used to be like, women are so complex. Like, they're so like, how do I understand them? And I'm a woman. And men are so straightforward. It's better to be friends with men. Like, strongly believe that. And it's taken me a while and collaboration with the Eves to sort of get into a point where I know that it is patriarchal in nature, that belief, buying into that thing of, women are only like fight with each other and only are fake friends with each other or frenemies with each other. So I think only when, for the women who are watching this and the women identifying folks and the men, I would only say you have to experience self-affirming and other affirming female friendships for you to realize how wrong this belief is, how absolutely not true this belief is. And that has helped us sort of overcome the whole insecurity, jealousy, the conflict aspect of it. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you. Yeah. Do you have anything else you'd like to? Yeah.
I would also just like to add, because I think we sort of covered the bit that we are all women group, but also just speaking of group structure, any dynamic and robust and alive group, I believe, and this is very personal belief, should have conflict, should have space for conflicts, should have space for conflict resolution. Because if, and as I've experienced artistic spaces, the moment there are no conversations and everybody is saying the same thing, okay, great, that's convergence. But if that keeps happening for years or months, there is something acutely that needs to be investigated, because it's unlikely that 8 individuals or 7 individuals in the same space are feeling exactly same. I at least in a degree there should be space to be, and that's extra labor, which brings me the conversation of what is valid and meaningful labor, and how do groups look at it, which to tie into our identity as women's group. For us, I think a conflict resolution conversation is as important as a conversation about logistically making a show happen, if not more. Because what sort of shows are we going to give if we haven't spoken about what's very present for us in the space? So I also feel like a lot of groups that I've been part of, which have been hyper patriarchal in nature, regards this as weak labor, as things are weak to be done. Arey, take this out of this space, na. Arey, apne aap mein baat kar lo na, which is ridiculous, and which is very problematic. This is what sort of leads to extreme toxicity. Yeah, that's just I want to add, just as a systemic organizational thing. Also, yeah, beyond identities.
I was in a community where every Wednesdays there was a circle only for conflict resolution. So you could talk about, like simple things like, oh, you looked at me that way, I felt that, you were judging me. It can be that, but that place is to bring out everything that's troubling you and hurting you. And I was like, I learned so much. And I totally agree with you, Lakshmi, when you say that, आप इसको नजरअंदाज करते हैं, you push it under the carpet. Either something is, it's going to blast out, and you're making it very trivial, which it's not. Like if it's hurting somebody, if it's troubling somebody, it's not, and that will show in your performance in your case, and it would show in the community in our case. Yeah. I wanted to add one more thing, which I can't. Yeah, the conflict thing. Right. So not having conflict and that being seen as how strong we are as a group is a patriarchal ideal, that there'll be one father figure and they'll put rules and then everyone is so obedient and such a loyal family.
Exactly. The conversation is not about not having thing. How obedient are you? How rule following are you? तुम अपना जो हमने सिस्टम का ब्लूप्रिंट दिया है, क्या तुम फॉलो कर रहे हो?
Yeah.
किधर है वॉइस? इंडिविजुअल्स किधर है?
That reminds me of Suraj Barjatya movies.
Yeah.
Hum aapke hai kaun and stuff.
Right.
Just to round off the conversation on conflict, an improv teacher of ours, Jonathan Pitts, taught us this very insightful workshop called Conflict Resolution Through Improv. And one of the biggest takeaways for me was, is the conflict bigger than the relationship? If it isn't, then it can be resolved. And if the conflict is bigger than the relationship, it's a deal breaker, then you're much better off just ending the relationship on a nice note and walking away, and everybody has peace, not much hard feelings. So that is my stance on conflicts. And my relationship with all my friends and my sisters in the Adamant Eves is that The relationship is absolutely way more important than any conflict that has come up so far. So my stance is I always want to sort it out. Always.
That's like gave me such a warm, fuzzy feeling, as if I were part of your group. Um,
You
um,
most definitely are. You are in conversation with us. You are always like anyone who wants to be a part of the Adamant Eves can be like in spirit. For improv, you'll have to train. That's
Please come and jam with us.
yeah. Is there any other topic you want to talk about now? Because I have one last question, but that's suitable for last question. So I don't want to.
I'd like to
want
hear
give
from
space if
Aarti.
you have
I think
something
we
which you
three,
think we should talk about.
I, in terms of conflict resolution, I completely resonate with what everyone says, and also the fact that by brushing it under the carpet or by telling, you know, apna apna sambhal lo types, it's trivializing the persons and their contribution to the group, because it so matters that both individuals, because they're, you know, whatever issues they have between themselves will show up ultimately in some way or the other. By just telling them to deal it with themselves by themselves is, it's, you know, jeopardizing the group itself, and that kind of foresight requires a lot of discussion internally, externally. And I think as Adamant Eves, the agreement and disagreement is something that we're doing it and we're learning. But and I'm also learning, you know, because I'm not someone who deeply disagrees with people, but and I choose to stay on the quieter side. But that doesn't mean that I would, you know, agree with someone even in the Adamant Eves blindly, just because I'm quiet or I'm not speaking. So that, and we've had like conversations around, you know, some ideas or some topics or something that some of us agree and some of us don't agree. And I think we are healthy and flourishing because of those agreements and disagreements that we bring.
Yeah. Any other topic that you think I've missed out? We spoke about how all women's improv group. Go on.
I have a topic. So as Adamant
You actually said this. Wait.
this is
Yeah.
the school child in me, right? I was conditioned all through school to just, you know, unless you raise your hand, no one's gonna give jack shit about what you have to say. So I'm just like, even with regular Adamant Eves, or with anyone that I speak with, I'll be just like, yeah. So so coming back to, like Shweta had already mentioned, that we don't completely and 100% rely on the humor bit of it. But there are times where the Adamant Thieves are hilarious, and they're damn funny. But again, the stereotype is that women can't be funny. It's we always have to tackle, one of the things that we have to tackle is that women can't be funny. But there are so many scenes that while I'm playing the scene, I'm in splits, like I'm in stitches. I can't do the scene because I'm laughing, and the audience is in on it, and that again becomes extremely humorous because the audience is laughing, the improvisers are laughing. Where's the show? So that is another stereotype that we heavily want to break, is that we don't have to be gaggy, or we don't have to be like rely on female stereotypes to be funny, but we can just come up with a scene that's extremely hilarious and be neutral completely.
I think I'd also like to mention this takeoff from Aarti there is that we have been, one conversation we have been having as Adamant Eves, but also as ICB, is about punching up and punching down as humor. Like I mean, there are two things about punching down, which is to make fun out of these stereotypes, the already marginalized communities and the stereotypes that exist there already. Is one, it's ethically wrong. You're just perpetrating something which is wrong. And second, it's too easy. It's not a challenge as an improviser. I mean, that is a challenge if you're going to make a joke out of something, out of a corrosive patriarchal heterosis, like, you know, system that's out there. That is a conversation. So to be able to punch up, to be able to make fun or create humor out of common things, because every day is so funny. Like every day, like there is so much. We have found so much humor today while we were talking, even out of two people talking together, or simple things like that, which has nothing to do with punching up or punching down. It's just like everyday humor. Or punching up is something we do. We do when we consciously bring out conversations about structures and the power. It's not random that we spoke about like abusive patriarch, and or the conversation about the different manifestations of this and how we then subvert it in a scene that's very or exaggerating something which is like seems small but is really a seed of toxicity or seed of patriarchy, and then when we play it out in like extreme exaggeration, it is hilarious because truth in it, and what we have done is artistically been able to portray it. The second conversation was about and this is an ongoing conversation which is about playing the other, playing a lived experience which is not ours. I think the conversation about the men in the stereotypical way and women has been sort of had, but the conversation about, and we're all aware and sensitive and unlearning human beings, are talking about how gender is not just binary, how nothing is binary, how so much of it is performative. So we're all, and there's no answers to it yet, but that's the conversation we are having. And it's important to talk about how we all are pretty much women identifying, and in that sense we are of a certain age group, and a certain class, and a certain, I'm guessing caste, I'm not sure, but yeah, the fact that I don't know also says something about the conversations we are not having. So we are also very aware of our demographics and the other, and we don't have answers, but we are talking about it and learning.
That was my next question, and the last question, that where, like, what yardstick are you putting for yourself in the coming years to grow as performers, and for Adam & Eve's itself? Like, where would you want to see? We're not talking about improv ko kaise badlenge aur bahar ka improv kaise badalna chahiye. Like, we're not talking about how improv in general should, how you see for it, but for Adam & Eve's, what are your, goals? Sorry.
This is quite the loaded question, isn't it? I don't think we have a goal per se for the Adam & Eve's, other than we want to do good improv. We want to tell stories that are true, inclusive, diverse. We want to do things that are authentic to our lived experiences, while also broadening our ideas and broadening our horizons on what we know about the world. And we want to have fun. Like, that's pretty much the only things that we've ever quantified or qualified per se. I don't know if anyone else feels differently.
So I'm going to raise my hand.
Yeah, I actually wanted, like, individual people to say, I wish Adam & Eve to be this. I wish Adam & Eve's to be this. And yeah, like, if you, yeah.
So I look at it a little differently. So there is this belief about how you need to have individually and as a group, you need to have these goals that are sort of codified and written down. And if not, you will stagnate. And while there is some truth to this, personally and as a group, I believe that whatever Bala has said, be true to yourself, call out anything, be ready to grow as life calls to you, and have fun. As long as we are doing these four, life will provide us paths to go forward in. We will not stagnate. This is what I believe. And that is why I think all of us were like thinking when you mentioned goals. We were like, goals.
This is a wrong word. After I said it, I was like, oh shit, that's why I said sorry.
No, I think it's a good point to discuss.
I know where I want to take Uri Kalankini. I know which conversation we should start having later, and that way, the direction.
Yeah.
For me, it's an extension of myself. Yeah. Yeah.
I think definitely agreeing with Bala and Shweta, and definitely all of us going like, ooh, goals, which also is interesting because we are, I think, quite happy with the place we are in, even if I'm speaking for everybody, because it's we are happy as performers, we're happy as a community that we are creating. For me, something I would like to do and in individual capacity and is to outreach, maybe work with younger women, because it does feel like we have a very powerful, and even if it means not big didactic workshops necessarily, which have their own place very much, but even if we could perform as all women's team to say that, hey, this is possible, we can create all women's teams and like perform, and you can too, and to not like be models for things, but to just spark of possibilities. Another thing is, of course, to keep networking. Something that has happened with the lockdown, and absolutely in identification of all that's going wrong during the lockdown. One thing that has happened in improv community is a lot of networking and a lot of reaching out. So we have learned quite a bit of improv in last 3 months globally, like than almost like 6-7 months of if we were not like so online, which has brought in a lot of conversations. For example, some of the conversations about punching up, punching down, speaking to the other, how do we play an experience which is not ours. All of these conversations are opening up because of this. So to continue keep doing that, to continue networking with players who don't play like us, especially who play differently, is so important. So yeah, so that's something I'm looking for.
When you said about goals, I'm like, annual general meeting mangta hai. We need full meeting, decide 3-month goal, 4-month goal, biannual goal, and all. But yeah, doing good improv and good quality improv, something we strive. And also because something fell in my apartment. Sorry for the disturbance. So, and also the fact that we say, and we're really proud that we are India's first and only all women improv group, but we don't want to stay that way for a long time. We want like others to come up and say, yeah, we are second, or even like fight us on saying that we are first. Like, we would love more women improv groups to come on stage and perform and teach us as well whatever they have to bring to the plate. And also personally, like as a goal, since you mentioned goal, I'm like, okay, I'll make up one goal. Is that
I apologize.
no, I'm just pulling a leg. It's just that I want Adam and Teves to like travel, and we've already traveled a little bit, but I want us to travel globally, worldwide, within India, outside of India, and show what we have to the world.
Yeah.
We were actually supposed to go to Singapore for the Singapore Improv Festival in April before the lockdown happened. And yeah, the only thing that we can say in terms of goal are all quantifiable. Like, we aim to do 6 shows in a year. We aim to learn this many things and do these many workshops and improve our art. Those are the only things. That's about it.
Thank you so much. It was great talking to all of you, and it was so much fun. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
How can people contact you? Like, if they want to jam with you, if they want to collaborate with you, just letting you know that many performers from this call were there on one playback theater performance which we did on Menstrual Hygiene Day with we Ori Kalankini and a lot of performers from here did. So the collaboration possibilities are endless. So yeah, how do they contact you? How can they collaborate with you? Anything else from there? Yeah.
Okay. So you can find us our website. We can even leave it on the video after this is done. Is icbangalore.com. You can find us on Facebook, Improv Comedy Bangalore, ICB. We're on Instagram as IC Bangalore. We also have a Facebook page, The Adamant Teves. I can also leave my email if people would like to collaborate that way. Yeah.
We also have shows on Saturdays and Wednesdays. We have on 20th, we are playing this really interesting performatively feuding form called theater sports, which two teams, which is Adamant Eves versus Everlasting Adams, which together is ICB. For OML, so you could find us there, and all our Wednesday and Saturday shows mostly are also live streamed on Facebook at ICB. So please do find us there. The men's show on the day, World Day of Menstrual Hygiene, was with City Lamps, and a lot of us were there.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Sneha. We've
All
had,
right.
Thank you,
Sneha.
Sneha.
had a lot of fun. Really insightful.
Yes.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
I had like a lot of fun. Good conversation, no? Yeah, I'm so proud
Good
of us.
conversation. Good chat. Good chat.
Such a rich conversation. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Then bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sneha. See you soon.
Thank you all.